And we're back. All right, so at this point, we have Ed Owens on the line. He is running for the sheriff's office here in Clark County. I live in Vancouver, Washington, so he's in my county that he's running for. So I'm very interested, and I've been following this race very closely. Ed, are you there?
I am, Mack. I am.
All right. Well, how are you doing, first of all?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for asking. And I would like to say to all the moms out there, Happy Mother's Day today.
You just got some extra votes right there. I'm sure a lot of moms out there are very touched by that. So, by the way, and I appreciate. I know you have children, and your wife is giving you up for us to do this interview today. I really appreciate that. Especially it's her day. So tell her again. I know I said it before, but I just want to publicly thank her for letting us borrow you today.
I will let Christy know.
All right. Okay, so I have some questions for you, and some of these, I don't know if you heard the interview from last week. We had your opponent, John Grazer, on the last show. Some of these are going to be some of the similar questions. I don't know if you heard the interview, but anyway, some of them have been kind of changed to work for you. Give me one second here. Something's popping up on my on my screen here. Okay, there we go. All right. Anyway, so these questions. Let me cut right to the chase here. First things first, I want to know why do you want the job, Mr. Owens?
Well, I have a culmination of experience. My whole career has prepared me for this job. 23 years in law enforcement, retired from the military reserves as a first sergeant. So I'm familiar with leading large groups of people in order to accomplish the mission. At the same time, I take care of my people. Here in Clark County, I served on the Law Enforcement Council for almost 6 years as one of the agency heads when I was with WSU Vancouver. So I'm familiar with what it takes at an executive level to run an agency, to lead a large group of people, and to do it in an effective way. I have the background, and I've worked specialties, and I have my degree and the pedigree that goes with a long service career of being in service to my community.
Yes, sir. So, for me, I'm always really distrusting of people who actually want to be politicians or want some kind of power. I think those are the kind of people that probably you shouldn't give power to. But, I find it interesting that you're running as an independent. And one question I had is actually, why did you decide to run as an independent?
The position of the sheriff, I don't personally believe should be partisan politics. If you need assistance or your neighbor needs assistance, the sheriff's office responsibility is to serve your needs, respond, and we're not going to ask what your political ideology is. We're there to serve whatever that need is. So I don't believe it's a partisan position. And you made the comment about somebody who wants to be a politician. This is not something I ever thought about, running for office. It's a decision that I made late last year. I actually resisted it quite a bit, the concept of it. But I made that decision that it's important if somebody wants to be that change in their community, we can sit and we can talk about it. We can, be upset or angry at what we see happening in our community. Or I'm the type of person that's going to step forward and say, well, I'm willing to step forward and make that change. I'm willing to be that agent of change instead of just staying on the side and talking about it.
And okay, so that actually leads me to a question here, and I want to actually find out, because if you were compelled to do it, you didn't think that there were any other candidates out there that really fit the bill, were acceptable candidates for sheriff. That's why you decided to step up and run. What are some of the main differences between you and your opponents out there? I don't want you to sit here and trash them or anything. I just want to know, where do you guys stand differently?
No, I'm not going to do that with my opponents. I've said this several times, and I'll say it again now for all your listeners. For the first time in almost 3 decades, the citizens in this county have an opportunity to pick a new type of sheriff or what they want their sheriff's office to be like. We've had the same leadership within this county for so long. Most people grew up underneath that leadership. So there's a wide range of choice for the first time in a long time. Now, differences. We're all capable. Like I said, there are some differences in, some of my background in this military and some of the executive work I did there. That's a difference, especially being that first sergeant. And that's a very specialized position within the military. Another difference, I served on the law enforcement council, like I mentioned. Of the 4 candidates, I'm the only one that has done that. Those are 2 very important differences. We all have distinguished careers. We all have worked a wide range of issues. But one thing that really, I think, separates me besides what I've mentioned is my experiences are culminated from multiple agencies, multiple different types of settings and environments. And I'm not tied to the existing structure here in Clark County. I worked for the Sheriff's Office for 7 years, but I bring experiences from other places, other ways of doing things, instead of just within this one agency.
Yes, sir. And first of all, I just want to say thank you for your service. I understand you were in the Air Force and you're a first shirt, and I think that's really awesome that you did that. I was actually Air Force as well, so again, I really appreciate what you guys did. I had a lot of encounters with my first shirts, and they do a lot of good in the unit. So, I really appreciate what you did. And as far as your time as a first sergeant, can you just to give an idea of some of the things you went through? Can you give our audience just maybe some obstacles that you had to overcome while you were a first sergeant?
Well, a first sergeant is a very busy position within a unit. You have 2 sides. I always tell folks that aren't familiar with a first sergeant, it's kind of like the mother and the father of a unit. You're responsible for the discipline and on that side of the house, but as more of a nurturing mother, you are responsible for taking care of your people, making sure that they're well trained, making sure that they're very competent to do their job, making sure that not just the employee, but their entire family is taken care of, and the relationships within the unit are taken care of with other units, with the community. So challenges with that, they don't have a lot of personnel issues, and it can be very, very challenging. You have 100, 200, 400 people, and they all have their lives, and so balancing, helping each of those people while still getting the mission done, it can be quite challenging. I've had members in my unit, killed in action. Or die in accidents, and then dealing with those and interacting with the families and, of course, the people in the unit and helping them through that moment. Those have been some very challenging moments in my career.
Mm-hmm. I can imagine. And the first sergeant, I've had firsthand experience with my first sergeant. They helped me when I had a death in the family and all that. And I had people help me get a plane ticket home. The first sergeant did a lot for me, and I really value that position especially. So again, thank you for doing that. Moving forward here, I got some questions from listeners. Sure. One listener would like to know if you're affiliated at all with the Oath Keeper movement, the group, the Oath Keepers. Do you know anything about them, first of all?
Yes, I am familiar with the Oath Keepers and their commitment to the oath they've taken, whether it be law enforcement or military, to the Constitution. Okay,
so are you a member, or do you support those the 10 tenets that they have? There's 10 orders that they won't follow. Have you looked at that at all?
I have looked at it in the past. I'm not a member of the Oath Keepers. I could not recite to you all 10 of those tenets. I believe and support the concept of what the Oath Keepers stand for, that they're, we have a great Constitution and a bunch of great constitutional rights, making sure that those rights are honored and respected and protected. I definitely agree with the concept of the organization.
Okay, so this leads me to my next question here, and I'm really interested to because I haven't actually seen any of the information on your website about this topic.
Okay.
But as far as the Second Amendment, one question that I would like to ask you, and I want to get a very clear answer here. Okay, so I'd like to know if you would ever, under any circumstance, participate in the confiscation of firearms from American citizens, whether or not it's somebody ordering you to do it or you ordering someone else to do it. All right, that's the answer that I want
for you.
Yeah. I like the clarity there, because if you're not clear on this, and one thing, I got a problem with Adkins, his social media, his website thing, that he kind of does a dodge on it, where he's like, I can't imagine a scenario where I would participate in this kind of a situation. That to me is a really evasive way to answer the question. I like yes or no answers to those kind of things. So I want to move on. As far as open carry, concealed carry, constitutional carry, where do you stand? What are your thoughts?
Okay, well, this is an open carry state, so citizens have the right, as long as they can own a gun, they have the right to carry it open carry. There obviously are some restrictions. You can't carry open carry on someone else's property without their consent, but in the public, you have the right to carry a weapon. That's the law, and as sheriff, I'm going to defend that and protect your right to carry open carry. Concealed carry, we have laws in the state of Washington. There are some people that are excluded from being able to get a concealed weapons permit or concealed license. Convicted felons, people involved in domestic violences, those types of things. I support those exclusions. But this is a, shall issue state. And so if a citizen comes to me as the sheriff at the sheriff's office and wants a concealed permit, they go through the process, I'll issue a concealed license.
Okay, so you're not, I've heard a lot of different sheriffs out there that said, you have to have like specific reasons why they'll issue you a permit, like especially in like California or more left-leaning places. I know we are pretty left-leaning here as well, I guess, but I just want to make sure and be clear. You won't reject concealed carry permits, as long as somebody doesn't have some kind of domestic thing on their record, or they're part of the list of people that can't have them.
Yeah, if they're on that exclusion, the citizens of this state have said the following categories are excluded. If they're excluded, then I cannot issue a permit to them. Okay. But if they're not on an excluded list, such as, say, a convicted felon or somebody who's been convicted of a domestic violence crime, those are just two examples I can think of off the top of my head. Why you choose to carry concealed is because that's your right. You mentioned California. Well, we're not in California. We're in Washington.
Exactly.
And this is a shall issue state.
Mm-hmm. So
as a citizen, you're entitled to it.
As far as the whole process, I'm just curious what your thoughts are on this. Do you think that the fact that we have to ask for permission to exercise a right, such as concealed carrying, do you think that that's a constitutional process? Do you think that I guess the question I'm asking is, do you support constitutional carry, where you don't require a permit to carry a firearm?
I do not support the constitutional carry concept. Because how are you going to know if that individual is a convicted felon or one of those groups that shouldn't have a firearm if there's not a checks and balance to make sure that that's out there?
See, my opinion.
Sure that is?
Oh well, I can tell you how it's not your responsibility to find out if that person carrying is a felon unless they've committed a crime or they do something, And the fact is, there's already things out there. I mean, we could get into this debate, but I don't want to move it towards that. I don't want to try to debate you. I just want to ask the question. But yeah, as far as that, I think we differ on that a little bit significantly. But anyway, so my next question here. Yeah, it's all right to disagree. I want to kind of be as impartial here as possible, just so the listeners out there can get as much information from you as they can. So, All right, I got another question from a listener here. As far as gun-free zones, what are your thoughts on these? Do you think that they help deter crime, or are they a negative thing?
I believe that the presence of, there's a lot of literature out there, a lot of research. Gun-free zones don't necessarily stop a criminal. They don't stop a crime. There's a lot of discussion, and I don't know if you're alluding to schools or if you're alluding to other locations. But the presence of an armed individual can deter and often will stop if something starts a crime from continuing. And there's a lot of really good examples out there you could cite on it. There's one of the things that I'm very in favor of is expanding out our school resource program to our middle schools for a lot of different reasons. But one of that, is the presence of an armed individual within our schools. There's been discussion about, would you be willing to or would you support arming qualified teachers that are trained? You don't go through the background and everything else. And I very much would entertain that discussion. I do agree that the presence of those types of things can prevent incidents like we've seen in this country or we've seen elsewhere around the world.
What are your thoughts on the teachers arming? There's a lot of places, especially I think in Oregon, there's a place that is allowing teachers to arm themselves if they choose to, conceal carry permit holders to conceal in the classroom. Do you support that?
I do, as long as that program, we sit down and law enforcement's aware of it and we're at the table and we discuss it. We make sure that those who are carrying inside the school understand. They're trained. We're aware of it, just for nothing else from an officer safety standpoint, safety for the students in the school. I know there's teachers that have concerns, so these are all going to have to be discussed, but I definitely would support having that discussion, and I would support that type of a model, but we all need to sit down together and agree on what it's going to look like.
Okay. So I got another listener question here. They want to know, and we've kind of touched on this before, obviously you'd be swearing an oath to the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, which you've already done before, but they want to know if you actually support it, and they also want to know if you're willing to sign the Constitutional Sheriff and Peace Officers Association resolution, where it basically, is another oath to support the Constitution.
Well, that's a two-part question. We'll answer the first one. Do I fully believe in the Constitution? Absolutely. And my oath is to the federal and state constitutions, both of them. In Washington, we have we're lucky to live in a state that actually grants, in a lot of ways, more protections for the citizen than under the federal Constitution. So we're very fortunate in this state. In regards to the resolution, after I listened to your show with Grazier, I was trying to actually find a good copy of that. So I don't know. I'd have to read that and actually make a decision. I don't know if I would or wouldn't sign it, and just being honest with you. But I do support my oath to both constitutions, and I will protect citizens' rights regarding that in this county.
Yes, sir. Well, as far as where to find the association resolution, it's cspoa.org for my listeners. Anybody out there that would like to check that out, and it basically have drafted this with different constitutional sheriffs, and I think it was drafted in Las Vegas and approved by the members present. So they encourage all sheriffs, peace officers, and those in public office to sign it. And they welcome all signatures from other U.S. citizens. So feel free, anybody, if you are interested, check it out. It's cspoa.org, and they have a lot of good information on there about it. So that was just provided from one of my listeners. So I've looked at that briefly. So, all right, I got another question for you, sir. As far as the Clive and Bundy Ranch situation, I'm sure you've heard about it in the news. Were you following that situation at all?
Yes, of course.
Okay, so if anything, what would you have done differently if you were the sheriff in Clark County, Nevada?
There's a few things that I would have done differently. First, I would have been there from day one if it had gotten to that point. I don't believe it should have ever got as far as it did. From what I've been able to gather by reading as much as I possibly can, I'm not there and I don't have access to a lot of the information, truth's always in between the two versions that you see.
Mm-hmm.
But from what I can gather, a decision was reached, and they waived, or I should say, they suspended the 30-day public comment on this decision to round up these cattle in the interest of law enforcement, pending law enforcement operations, or however they phrased it. So there's a couple of questions with that. One, why did they suspend the comment period? If it truly was for something law enforcement related, then why wasn't the sheriff involved in that discussion?
Absolutely.
Why wasn't the sheriff brought in during that period of time to discuss, this is what's going on and this is what we are proposing or we want to do or whatever? But that discussion, I can't find where that happened.
Well, it seems like Sheriff Gillespie, he had a hands-off approach on this. He basically just let the BLM do whatever they wanted, from what I understand.
And that's kind of what I'm reading as well. And it wasn't until after the demonstration outside his headquarters that he actually went out. I may be wrong on what my understanding of that is, but that's what I read. He should have been involved in the planning phase. If there was going to be something going on, he should have been at the table having that discussion. And either to prevent whatever was going to happen from happening, to be involved in it, to make sure that it didn't get to the situation we had. We should have never had that type of confrontation, particularly if everybody is involved in the discussion and everybody is involved in resolving something before it gets to that point.
So if you were in that situation and things are escalating, it's looking like it's going to be, an armed conflict, what would you do?
Well, the sheriff needs to be there. And if you're involved, I can't see that if the sheriff would have been involved, if I was involved in this as the sheriff down there, I can't see that it would have gotten to that point because I would have been involved on the ground from the beginning. Now, worst case scenario, we have a situation that takes place like what we saw. The sheriff was not consulted. The sheriff was not involved. Then the sheriff needs to be there immediately and do like what was done by that Metro chief out of Vegas, negotiate that both sides are going to pull back on this. Nobody wins in an armed conflict between citizens and law enforcement. And, diffuse the situation, resolve it, get it calmed down, and then, I saw just this week that he's opened an investigation into the events leading up to what happened during and subsequent to it. And I'm looking forward to reading, the results of his investigation.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to be following that. That's for sure. So, okay, I got another question here from a listener. They want to know what your plans are in Clark County here at home, not the one in Nevada, to fight crime. So what is your actual plan to actually, help us, fight crime here at home? Being not even just the big ones, but also like small little burglaries and things like that. Vandalism, things like that. What do you have on the table? What are some of your ideas?
Well, we have a lot of great programs in the sheriff's office that are effective. Some of them can be expanded. Some of them I don't think we do enough of. It's just a broad question because there's no one thing that you can sit there and pinpoint and say, well, if we do this, we will have a X percentage reduction in crime. Crime is not that simple to describe or any one thing that we can do or two or three things that we do to significantly reduce crime. I mean, if there's a specific topic you want to talk about, we can definitely talk about that. Some of my experiences that I know work, police work, having good relationships with the citizens, that's critical. If we don't have that positive working relationship, we're not dialed in which the public feels like they can come to us where they'll feel comfortable. And I'm not saying that's the case right now. I'm just saying, but if we don't have that type of a strong relationship, they don't give us the information. There's only so many deputies in this county. and we can't be everywhere, and we can't see everything.
Well, as far as particular programs, I spoke with Mr. Grazer about a knock and talk program. Is that something that you would support, or is that something you're interested in doing?
Knock and talks are great. We've been doing it in law enforcement for a long time. When I was on the narcotics task force, we'd get a tip and you'd go do a knock and talk. It is a good tool. It's not going to solve all the crime we have in this county. It's like any other tool. It has a purpose. Deputies on the road can do knock and talks. Detectives can do knock and talks. And it will affect some things, but it's just a tool. And it can't be used everywhere to effectively reduce all crime.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah. As far as any other tools out there, is there any other programs similar to that you may have an idea about or that you'd like to see implemented in our county?
Well, one area that my last assignment at the Sheriff's Office is I worked criminal intelligence. That was my assignment as a detective. And so I worked with all the law enforcement agencies in Clark County. I also worked with Skamania, Cowlitz, Wahkiakum counties, and I supported investigations throughout Southwest Washington. Organized crime, gangs, human trafficking, weapons trafficking, all of these types of issues. Having a function within an agency that is sharing information with the other agencies. Because what happens here in Clark County, it's not like our criminals live here, commit their crimes here, and they don't ever go anywhere. We have folks from the surrounding area that come into our county, and vice versa, folks from here that go elsewhere. Crime doesn't have a boundary. And what I have found in my experience is sharing information and working together with all the agencies around us, we actually start to have more of an impact. You can start to figure out who are those, the 10% of the criminals within the community responsible for 90% of your crime.
So as far as the kind of programs that come together, is that like computer networks or some kind of information sharing network?
Yeah, there are several information networks that are available and that are in use, which we can share that type of resources. Just recently, there was an agreement reached between Clark County law enforcement agencies and the Portland area, in which we will work. The commissioners just approved that, I believe it was last month. It's an upgrade so that we can better share information, better identify career criminals, because they're really the ones that commit most of the criminal behavior in a community. So that just happened. So expanding those types of systems, I'm very much in favor of it. It's something I did a lot of.
Yes, sir. Okay, well, cool. So as far as this, I've been having a really good time talking with you, Ed. We got to cut to a quick commercial break. Can you stick around for another segment with us?
I can.
Okay, great. All right, we'll be right back with more with Ed Owens in about a minute. Don't go anywhere.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/OnTheMoveShow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
And we're back. I appreciate you all sticking with us. We have on the line Mr. Ed Owens, who's running for Clark County Sheriff as a candidate. And we're in the middle of an interview. We're talking about a bunch of different stuff. If you guys have any questions that you'd like to ask him, please give us a call. The number to the show is 619-924-0986, or you can email the show at talk@onthemoveshow.com. And I'll ask your questions on the air. Are you there, Ed?
I am.
Okay. All right. So we got another listener question for you, and on your website it says that too many aspects of the sheriff's office actually lack transparency. So I'm curious, what do you mean by that specifically, and what would you do to correct that?
Okay. Well, I'm glad you brought that up. There are a lot of aspects. One thing that is noticeably absent from the sheriff's office is a lot of citizen involvement within the agency. We hire deputies, but there aren't citizens that are involved in that hiring process. There are things and incidents which happen within the sheriff's office, but we don't have any involvement from the community in reviewing those things, reviewing policies, reviewing incidents that take place. We just don't have that. And to what level we have partnerships with the community, and we do work with them in those areas, some very good examples. But I want to bring more citizen involvement into the sheriff's office. This is what we do, and this is how we do it, but it's based upon your input. And the services we provide and how we choose to provide them is based upon input from the citizens.
Okay.
We rarely have town halls or open forums in which, the sheriff meets with the citizens in a group setting. You see representatives do this. You see other elected officials do it, but we rarely do that.
So that's something that you'd like to...
Absolutely.
That's something... Okay. Yeah. Sorry, there's a delay on Blog Talk Radio. I don't mean to walk over you. Continue.
We also have, recently I was pleased to see that the commissioners authorized 2 additional positions to help with public records. We have a lot of public records requests as a county sheriff's office. And we need to do a much better job in allowing the public access to the records that we have. People have legitimate requests. The information is theirs, and we should be doing a much better job than we have historically regarding these records being released to the public so that you can find out what it is you want to know.
So as far as the license plate tracking program, I was curious, what are your thoughts on that? Is that something that you support, you would like to implement here in Clark County?
The license plate tracking, the scanners that I'm familiar with, that I have some very limited experience with, were used in regards to identifying and locating stolen vehicles. And basically would be able to collect a large amount of data and rapidly identify, hey, there's 2 stolen vehicles at the mall parking lot, as an example. And then we could recover that stolen property. So that is the application that I've seen used in this county successfully, and then its use is very limited. It's not, I'm not aware, I should say, and I don't know of any other applications that we've been using it here in Clark County.
Well, there's a lot of people that are concerned with the amount of government surveillance, at the cost of privacy. People are concerned that even though this may give us some more security as far as being able to catch criminals and things like that, it's one more thing of Big Brother, spying on people and knowing where everybody went. They can track your license plates and find out where you've been, what your routines are, things like that. It's the same kind of argument with the drone use in the counties as well. So I just want to be clear, is this a program that you would like to continue, or would this be something that you'd want to keep out of our county?
Anytime we choose to use a piece of technology to help in law enforcement, you have a responsibility to make sure that that technology is being used and balanced against the rights of the citizen. There's a tendency, there's lots of good examples of when technology or a new tool comes into the hands of law enforcement, or they have the opportunity to use one, it can be abused. The role of a sheriff or a chief or anybody who's in a position within law enforcement that supervises is to make sure that if, and I use the word if it's used, that it's used very narrowly, and it's done in such a way as, it doesn't violate the citizen's rights at all. But that's the job of a sheriff and a chief to make sure that's being done correctly. Way we've used it in this county, just to look for and recover stolen vehicles, and that's what the data is used for. And I know that's what they've used it for. We weren't tracking movements of people. We were looking to recover stolen vehicles. And that type of limited scope use doesn't, in my opinion, violate constitutional rights of privacy.
All right. So another question here, as far as from your website. On your website, you're pictured with an armored military vehicle. Actually, I went and checked that out. This is from a listener. So I want to know what your thoughts are on these being used in our police departments, and what do you think if you were if you were the sheriff? I almost said president. If you were the sheriff, would you try to keep these in our sheriff's office or our police departments? Do you find a use for these, or I just want to know what you think about them.
Okay, I know which picture you're talking about, and that is actually from the Air Force. That's called a peacekeeper. We use them in security forces. And they have they're a great tool when they're used correctly. The reason we have them, and I would want to continue to have them, is if we need to go into a tactical situation, heavily armed subject, or someplace where we need the armor in order to get close into the situation, then they're used primarily by SWAT or some of the tactical units. They're not used for patrol purposes. They're only used in those situations where it's appropriate. Most of the time when those get taken out, it's for public display or open houses, or for use by SWAT when they need it because they need that ballistic protection.
So would you be looking to get more or get rid of some of the ones that we have? From what I understand, we have 4 of them in the county. Do you think that we need 4, or we need more or less?
4 is a good number. I know that they're pre-positioned throughout the county so that if something happens down in Vancouver, there's one that's housed downtown with the Vancouver Police Department. And so if we need one of these, you go get it. There's some that are housed out in the county as well, so that you don't have to drive 45 minutes one way to go get that vehicle. If there's an active shooter situation, say at a school, and you need to get one of these vehicles so that you can respond and get in close to the situation to neutralize it, you don't want to have to, like I said, drive an hour, hour and a half round trip to get access to one of these. But they're not used for patrol. I think we have a good number of them. I don't see a reason why we need to buy more. They're pretty expensive. Even when we get them on surplus, you still have to retrofit them. So I can't see buying more of them, but I do agree that we do need them in law enforcement. We pre-position them in the event we have to use it.
Okay, so this leads me to the next question here. As far as your officers wearing video cameras, and we've talked about transparency in the department and everything. So in California, in a 12-month period, there's an 88% decrease in complaints filed against officers and a 60% decrease in the use of force by putting cameras on their officers. So, according to my listener, they say the technology helps with accountability, but also officer safety and evidence. Would you consider implementing something like this in your department?
Oh, absolutely, I would consider it. I've had this discussion with a few people. One of the issues we have right now is it requires a massive amount of storage to store all of those videos, and then under the records retention, store it long enough so that people have access to those records, courts have access to those records. It would be a very large capital outlay to implement that system. I think it's a really good idea to start with our tactical units. If we're going to deploy a SWAT team or a tactical unit, then those units, I agree, should have a camera on them. That is a very high-profile incident. There's a lot of liability potential for the agency, safety issues for the officers and the citizens. I think that would be a very good place to start with cameras.
So then I'm guessing that you back up the statement when you said on your website, being open for citizens to be involved and monitor and see what the sheriff's office does is critical to the maintenance of trust between sheriff's office and citizens of Clark County. So you wouldn't have a problem with the fact of them having it if you had the logistical capability, them having cameras on their body the whole time they're on shift then?
I don't have a problem with that. If that's going to require a large capital outlay. There are times when I don't think it's appropriate for that camera to be on. I mean, let's just say that the citizens of this county said, we want this, and they overwhelmingly, this is something we want, and then we have the ability to fund it and put that type of a system in place. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean that those things, or I would agree that they should always be on. I mean, there are times where, if it's that officer's lunch break, should the camera be on? If they're using the restroom, should it be on?
Oh, okay. Yeah, and I get what you're saying with that. Obviously, there has to be some kind of stipulations to be able to
Absolutely.
not have them being filmed when they're using the restroom or not on on duty or something like that if they're on breaks or something. I get that, but if for the most part though, in acceptable ways of like performing their duties, that's something that you would support though if we had the logistical ability though, right?
If we have the logistical ability, and this is what the citizens of this county want to do, then I'm going to support what the citizens of this county would like to see.
Okay.
I would like to see these cameras on our tactical units. I think that is something that would be easier to implement in the short term. It's still going to be expensive, but instituting that in the short term, I mean, those are the most critical incidents. Those are the most important incidents that law enforcement's involved with, and I think tactical cameras definitely need to be there.
I like the idea of having them rolling anytime that they're in contact with the public. So if they're in some kind of incident, traffic stop, something like that, I think that they should probably be rolling. But it does kind of touch on the same subject of privacy, not for the officer but for the citizens, as far as more cameras, more Big Brother, things like that. So there's a lot of stuff on that to talk about. But anyway, next question here.
I would like to make one other comment about that.
Oh, go ahead.
Comment about the cameras. We have a few vehicles that have them for traffic purposes, like our traffic enforcement units. And it's a great tool. And the camera activates when the lights turn on. Mm-hmm. And the officer is required to notify the person this is being recorded. And yes, it does have an impact on officers being assaulted, a reduction in that, a reduction in complaints. And so we have had, that's the only limited use that we have had to date. And it's effective. We only have a handful of vehicles with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I like the fact that we have dash cams and things like that. I think that's good for officer safety. I think it's also, the more that we can record public officials performing their duties, I think that the more accountable they are, and the more protected they are. That's officer safety as well, because now it's not his word versus somebody else's. Now we have a matter of fact, and the camera doesn't lie. So anyway, as far as the next question I have for you, sir, medical marijuana and recreational marijuana, what's your stance on that?
The citizens of the state of Washington, through the referendum initiative process, have made it legal in the state of Washington to possess and consume marijuana. That's the law. I mean, there's a federal standard that's different, but we're not going to enforce somebody because arrest them or write them a citation and give them a court date because they're in possession. It's legal.
So you would support the state law over the federal law?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Okay. All right. And it's until the recreational marijuana is regulated. This is a listener question, by the way. They want to know if you can make it the lowest priority of law enforcement in your department. Other departments have implemented this with great success with community relations and fund allocations.
Well, with it being legal right now, I'd have to ask a bunch of my friends on the road, but I don't believe it's a high priority for them.
Okay.
If someone's in possession. I think there's a more important discussion that we should be having, and I haven't seen a lot of it yet. Whenever these dispensaries or these locations open up, and I know that the state just recently did the lottery to issue the licenses, and I know they're trying to figure out exactly how they're going to implement this within communities to be in compliance with the law. This is legal. Citizens have the right to have it. There's a lot of resistance in communities to having a dispensary for a lot of reasons, and I understand a lot of the arguments on both sides. But the argument that, well, we're not going to have dispensaries here, that way people are going to have to drive, say, to the next county, or they're going to have to drive great distances. I don't think we should be excluding, if it's legal, we should make it accessible, but should we be making people drive an extra half an hour, 45 minutes, to obtain something they have a legal right to obtain? Are we... Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. It does make sense, and I think it kind of goes back to the community itself, though. If the community voted for it, then the community should be okay with them opening these things. The problem is that I think that some of these smaller communities feel like the majority has outvoted them. So I don't know. I mean, what do you think as far as that? Do you think a small community should be able to outvote the larger state community?
Can you rephrase that? I mean, I'm not quite sure I understand your question.
Okay, yeah. Well, as far as what's going on, some of these smaller cities, municipalities, things like that, they have an issue with the fact that it's been legalized in the state. So, they are a small community inside the larger community of the state. So I feel like some of these small communities, they are using their veto power basically to say, hey, well, you guys in the state voted it legal, but we don't support it here in this community, so we're making it inaccessible for these people. As far as that, do you support, the state saying that as a community that we should have access to it, or do you think that the small community has a right to keep it out of their city?
It's legal in the state of Washington, and I think if I understand what you're kind of referring to, like the Pierce County ordinance, in which Pierce County wanted it to basically, until it's deregulated at the federal level, we will not here in our county. Is that what you're getting to, that argument?
Yeah. I'm just curious what you think about city versus state law, county law, stuff like that. As far as if it, because the way I look at it, the states are the state is the majority government basically. That's telling the smaller governments, the city and county governments, what to do. And if these city governments don't want it in their city, do you think that they have a right to say no to it in their cities or counties, even if the state says that they should? You see what I mean? I know yeah. I'm having a hard time with this question, but yeah.
Yeah, it's a difficult question, and I think it's an important discussion. Because, a city does have its own statutory rights, and the community has its own statutory rights, to regulate commerce within its town. And so they can pass ordinances. So we need to figure out a way, though, to, work better together in regards to this. I mean, it is the law in Washington that it's legal, and I understand that some communities don't want it for one reason or another, or and we'll just leave it at that. They don't want it for one reason or another. But we have to figure out a way, because it is legal. And how are we going to give the citizens access to something that they have a legal right to have access to?
Sure.
We have to have that discussion. And if people have concerns, then we need to sit down and figure out what exactly are your concerns, and where's the common ground that we can all start with on this, and find something that works for everybody. We can't just push this over. I mean, I'm sorry, you're going to have to drive 100 miles to obtain something that you have a legal right to, because we disagree with it here. We need to have that discussion. How are we going to meet the needs of the citizens? It's their right. The citizens of this state said you have the right to smoke marijuana. So
well,
how do we? As
far as that, I understand where you're coming from, and honestly, I'm I'm against the war on drugs, so I think that we should be able to do it. I don't think that the government has the right to tell you what you can put in your body. And you know, I agree that I think it's kind of screwed up that we have to, you know, we are in situations in certain counties and cities where you would have to drive, you know, 100 miles or something to go get something that's legal, and it's been passed, you know, by law. It's legal now. So I get what you're saying. Let me ask you. I know I asked you, you know, why you were running, you know, and why you actually want the job, and I just want to wrap everything up here and give you an opportunity to tell people why they should vote for you, and also give them information about your website and what they can do to get involved.
Okay. Well, go in reverse order on that one. Anyone who would like more information, first of all, send me an email, at owensforsheriff.com. My cell phone's out there and listed. That's my personal cell phone. Give me a call. You want to sit and talk? Let's chat. There's going to be several opportunities out there, meet and greets, opportunities where I'm going to try and get out throughout the entire county to give everybody an opportunity so they don't have to drive forever to come and meet me. You can check the calendar at www.edowensforsheriff.com. Please, come on out. Ask me your questions. Interact with me. I believe sheriff should be ever present, should be ever accessible to the citizens, and that's what I'm going to be as sheriff. To the citizens who are making this decision, you got 4 options this election. Please take the time. Get to know each of the candidates, where they stand on various issues, what's important to them, and you will figure out who's most in alignment with you. And that's how I want you to vote. You know, this is our democracy. So I really want citizens, for the first time in a long time, they have a chance to really have a say in an election that's very important. And I want everybody to get out there and do that. Personally, when it comes to me, and I hope I have your vote in this election, if you're happy with the way we have been doing law enforcement in this county, then you have options on the table for you to consider when you cast your ballot. If you want a fresh perspective, something that's not tied to the existing structure, then I'm your man, and I'd ask for your vote.
Well, all right. Well, I sure do appreciate you coming on the show today, Ed. Again, your website, I'll post it on my page and everything when I post this show and everything. If anybody wants to get involved with him, please check out his stuff. And again, thanks so much for coming on the show, Ed. Is there any other thoughts that you want to get out there before we take off and cut to a commercial break?
No, I appreciate, Mack, the opportunity to be on your show and for your listeners to ask me questions. And I'm accessible. If anyone has questions, please reach out.
All righty.
I want to help answer your questions.
Well, thanks for coming on, and once again, good luck in your race here. And I hope everybody takes the time to learn more about you. Thanks again, Ed.
Thanks, Mack. I appreciate it.
All righty. So at this point, we're going to cut to a quick commercial break. I appreciate you guys sticking with us. When we come back, we'll have I'll do a segment on the Mack attack. So don't go anywhere.